Welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast. I'm your host, as always, Nate Crespo, and today we have another outstanding guest. He's a 3L at George Mason University Law School and currently works as a senior law clerk at ST Engineering North America. He's held past positions as a corporate legal intern at Yulco.
Yes.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Yulco Inc. and as the owner and founder of Third Power Fitness, Mr. Jeff Simmons. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great, Nate. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure. Um, yeah, just a little bit about me. That was a great background, a great introduction. Um, I am a 3L at George Mason Law School currently, about to graduate in May. And then I take the bar exam. So that's a whole nother chapter. Law now, and my background is in the fitness space.
Yeah, so you are one of those prime examples of what this podcast represents, what it exemplifies that there is no straight path to the law, that everyone has a very, very unique journey. And you yourself certainly have an extremely unique journey, just from looking at the little facts that I have for myself when I prepare for these episodes. You never, the first time you got into any sort of legal position was your second year into law school, so you never really had a background in it. And now going back to 2013, I always say how old am I, but I can't do the math. I was 10 years old. 10 years
Oh
old.
well,
I don't mean to make you feel old or anything.
no, you're fine.
But back in 2013, you were at Old Dominion University. You had a
Mhm.
bachelor's of science in exercise science, so nothing to do with the law. It took you, how many years is that? Nine? Is that 9 years? No, 8 years. 8 years
8 years.
until you got to law school. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about what you were doing before law school? Well, let's fast forward. We go forward and then we could go backwards. So, let's start going to 2019 to 2021. You were a fitness expert and co-lead of sports performance programming. I don't have the company there, but you were there. So, what went into the decision? Why'd you do it? Why'd you go to law school?
Uh, so before that, I left out the most important part about my background. I'm also a husband and father of a 18-month-year-old girl named Sophia. So, um, yeah. So going back to 2019, yeah. I was basically a fitness expert at Fitness Together Central Georgetown in DC. Law school. So I decided to go to law school in 2019. I was on my own for about 2 years or so with Third Power Fitness, the training company that I started. And then for those for those of you who have had your own business, Nate, you have yours now. It is not as easy as people might think. The entrepreneur social media world will have you believe that it's all fun and glitz and glamour. It's not. So around 2019, I was having trouble trying to keep leads and clients. So I was like, you know what? I need to go back to working again for somebody else because I have to pay bills. And I just got engaged to my now wife. Um, so going to law school was part of a financial choice as well. I needed to get into a career that was a bit more stable, long term. Uh, and in terms of school, I felt like I had more left on the table in terms of school, that I hadn't reached my full potential. I was actually in a master's program back in 2016 in sports psychology, and I did not complete it. So yeah, I had a lot left on the table in terms of school. And I love to read and write, which is all what the law is, for those of you who are lawyers out there and in law school. And lastly, My biological father was incarcerated for most of my life. Um, so it was a little bit of a redemptive story of sorts. The same system that put him away, I wanted to uh, be a part of that system to help those that need help. Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a really important point. I think in any decision, people have inspiration of any sort, and usually, any rationale is a good rationale when you're making a decision such as law school. And obviously, to your point, you talked about the financials of it all, and that's also really important. And we all know that the legal industry is quite lucrative, and you can make a lot of money from it. But I think at the same point, you still have the passion to try to fix the system and be a part of it and one person at a time, improve it, and eventually, you fix the parts, you fix the whole. So let's move to the first year of law school, 2021. People
Mhm.
say, it's dramatic. People say it gets crazy. Some people absolutely love it. I've had some people on this podcast who have been like, it was the best year of my life. How
Really?
how is it? I can already tell you didn't like it. How is it for you?
Yeah, the first year of law school, which was in 2021. It was around I would say, I guess, the end of the COVID pandemic, kind of. We still had to wear masks on campus. Yeah, I still remember my very first day, first class was torts. I was the first person called on that
Oh.
day in class. Me and Professor Davies are still, great. No, the first year was rough. It's rough. It's a whole new environment. I was also, as we had talked about, I was in a whole new field, something completely outside of my comfort zone. Um, and there was a bit of what I felt like imposter syndrome. Uh, for me, a part of it was just due to me being in a whole new environment, and then also George Mason is not the most racially diverse school. In the whole law school, my first year, there were 610 students, and 10 of us were Black, which is less than 2%. So it was a little jarring not to really see people that look like me on campus. So it's kind of like, do I really belong here? It's a whole new environment. On top of that, yeah, it was just challenging. The amount of reading, I think, is probably what gets people the most at first. It's a lot of reading. And then also not really having like strategies on how to approach the readings, how to take exams. Law school is very different from like different types of schools in general, especially professional schools, because almost all of your classes are based on one exam. So you get one shot. Most schools, most programs, all college, as you know, you take, quizzes and tests, exams, all stuff. Law school, you got one shot. And if you don't do well, that's your grade. So yeah, overall, definitely a challenge. Yes.
So I have to ask from that, you talked about getting out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
What were the sorts of things that you did outside of law school that kind of helped you, you know, get a little bit more comfortable? And I guess I'd ask the second question there. How was sort of that experience getting out of your comfort zone, and how did it improve you in any way? Did you feel like you grew as a person in any sort of way?
Yeah. I won't just keep that to like first year. I would just say law school in general has helped me grow as a person. It kind of like forces you to. So yeah, outside of law school, trying to lift weights, still trying to keep that going. It might come as a surprise to you and those out there listening, given my background, I fell off the wagon completely in terms of you know fitness and that stuff. I tried to prepare for it beforehand, going into like that summer, going into the 1 year. Um, I I basically had a whole like home gym. I bought a squat rack, cheap, a barbell, like plates. I put it all in the backyard. And so yeah, so fitness was something. Being married was also unique as well amongst my classmates. Most law school students, in their 20s. The majority of them, at least at my school, came from college straight to law school. So having a wife outside of that is a great support to have as well. And yeah, like those are probably like the main two things, I guess, outside of law school that helped me adjust was trying to keep in shape, and then my wife. Yeah.
So from that, I have to ask, since you were a bit older than the typical law student and everyone else there, how was sort of that experience throughout your whole, the whole time you've been at law school? How has that sort of shaped the sort of experience that you've had at the school in terms of, meeting people, talking to people, maybe getting friends, study people, people to study with, that sort of thing?
Uh, yeah. So for reference, I came into law school at 30 years old. So um, it wasn't. It's not, or it hasn't been like that difficult, I guess. Trying to make friends. I've definitely met like parents also in law school. So there's that. I would say one difference or two things that I found challenging is try not to compare myself to the younger students. Um, I feel like they probably had an easier transition in terms of going straight from college to law school because they're still in the rhythm and mode of like school and college and classes, whereas me coming from the workforce to law school is a little different. um, and life perspectives are very different from me compared to them. A lot of them you know didn't work like prior to law school, or didn't really uh, weren't really a part of the real world before law school, and if they were, it was for like a very short time period. Whereas for me, being in the real world for 8 years, a house, mortgage, paying bills, there's a slightly different perspective. Whereas like grades are very important. I just want to throw that as a caveat to you as well, because you're thinking about law school, and to those out there who are thinking about it. Grades are very, very, very important your first year. Um, and I also had to balance that with, um, like my family comes first too. So trying to balance those at the same time was certainly hard. Yeah.
So let's talk about your corporate legal internship at Yulco. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's Uloco.
Yulico.
Yes.
I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to say. I'm just having a lot of
No, you're
different.
fine.
Yulico Inc. What'd you do there? How was your experience there? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How was that first legal internship experience?
Yeah, so it's actually short for the Union Labor Life Insurance Company. So it's basically like a financial services company for union members. So uh, in a very simplistic way, they basically take the money that union members put in, and they invest that money into all types of different things like pension funds, and real estate is a big thing. So yeah, that was after my 1L year. I was actually placed with them through the Association of Corporate Counsel. So they did it was like a corporate scholars award program. So if you can see my hat, I was a part of the class of 2022. It was like a whole process. They picked 10 students, and I was a part of those 10 students to be placed with an in-house counsel role that summer. Yeah, it was fun. Getting the first experience in the legal world. I did like a bunch of contract work, employee contracts as well, like real estate investing. Which was probably like the main things I was involved on. I did some work with like mergers and things of that nature. And Pat, my boss, Pat had grown. We're still close now. He's a mentor of mine. He's a great person. So that was also a big takeaway from that as well, was the ability to network. You realize the legal world is very small. Fun story, Pat, my boss, my legal writing professor, my 1L year for both semesters, Cynthia Bailey, she was a Fairfax County attorney. Pat, my boss, was the godfather to Cynthia's daughter, which I didn't know that until I got to the job. And she was like, "Hey, like, by the way, do you know Pat?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my boss." And like, yeah. So that was just like a thing that showed me the legal world is very small. But no, it was definitely a great experience. I got to meet a lot of great people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had a good time, and what I have to ask is, from that experience, did you gain any idea of what down the road, well, not really down the road, but coming soon, that what sort of law that you would want to get into, what sort of area that you have interest in and want to pursue as a career?
Yeah. So corporate law is like my thing. So being able to do corporate, work was cool that summer, and also that was an in-house counsel job. So most of the legal field you can kind of, well, not most. I would say within the corporate side of things can kind of boil down into three roles. So you got your traditional law firms. You might have heard the big law, term. Your huge law firms. If you think of the TV show Suits, right, that's what that is. So you got those, big firms or medium-sized firms, and then you got within that you have the transactional work, which is the mergers, acquisitions, all that jazz, and then you got the litigation side, and then the third piece you have the in-house counsel. So those are the lawyers that work within actual corporations, Microsofts and Googles and stuff. They had their own counsel team. So being able to work in-house was very unique as well, because when you work in-house, your only client is the company. Whereas if you work at a law firm, your clients are multiple companies and all that stuff. So basically, corporate, transactional, in-house counsel work. That's like the area that I am trying to work in and currently seeking a job. So
Well, there you go.
yes,
So, if you're hiring, Jeff is looking for a job.
yes.
Don't worry. I don't have that much reach, but
No, you're
Yeah,
fine.
I got a little bit of an audience, Jeff. Don't worry, people are listening. I'll start sending your resume everywhere, even though I'm 20 years old and I don't have that kind of power. But you never know.
It's all
Now
good.
now we're moving to your senior law clerkship right now at
Huh?
ST Engineering North America in North America. Are you doing similar work as you were in the previous firm or no?
Yeah, so ST Engineering, so I'm working at the North American headquarters. It's basically the subsidiary of the parent company is based in Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
That's pretty
a
cool.
transnational company. So I am still doing like contract work, but I'm doing a little bit more. I have a more diversified palette currently. So I do a lot of labor and employment stuff currently. So like the last big thing I did, I wrote our disability accommodations guide. So for current employees or people who are applying for jobs that they need accommodations at the workplace. There's a whole process with the ADA that you have to go through, and companies have to abide by. So I wrote that policy for us. That was like the last like major thing I did. I've done things within like the fair use doctrine with copyright law. Um, we also, I can't talk about it too much. We had a corporate like name problem where our parent company, essentially the company in North America, we had some naming issues with certain state like jurisdictions, and we are still currently trying to sort that out. So yeah, like those are like the main things I'm doing now.
Now I have to ask, because from personal experience, I've only had one internship. I worked at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office on Long Island. That's where I'm from. And I remember being given a giant book, and I think it was Attorney Joe McCarthy, who worked in the office that I did, the Office of or yeah, Asset Forfeitures
Mm-hmm.
and finances, I think that's what it's called. I don't know, but shout out to all of them. Uh, I don't know if they're listening, but Joe, Craig, Rob, you all know each other. And I know them. They took me out to lunch at the end. It was very nice of them. Amazing internship. So anyone who lives on Long Island, I highly recommend it, even though I think they just closed the application. Nevertheless, I remember being given a giant book and I had to search up re-argument. And I had no idea what it was, but I researched it for a while. I did it for a
Mm-hmm.
while, and I gave Attorney Joe all the information that he needed, and he actually put what I wrote in the citation of one of his motions, and I felt like
Oh,
6 trillion
very cool.
bucks. But did you feel like 6 trillion bucks when your accommodation policy was put out into the public? I have to ask, did you feel that sort of experience as well? Because I was exhilarated.
Uh, yeah, so it wasn't a public document. It was an internal thing. I don't know if I've had something put out in the public. They're mainly internal documents. No, yeah, it certainly does. It makes you feel good to have the work that you've done being accepted by the general counsel and the corporate counsel and things like that. It is it's a confidence boost from the standpoint of it is confirmation and validation that you can actually do the work. Um, I think we talked about in the intro thing. Both of us have an affinity for Alex Hormozy, and he said something in a video. You don't like gain confidence by like yelling out affirmations. You gain confidence by building a stack of undeniable proof. So uh, doing work that is accepted by the attorneys above you is, proof and validation that you're actually capable of doing the work.
Oh, Jeff, you've made such a big mistake because you just brought up Alex Hormozy. So now we have to talk about Alex Hormozy. I love Alex Hormozy. I've known about Alex Hormozy since I think when I was a freshman in college. My brother sent me one of his videos one time.
Mhm.
I just went crazy. I've been watching, listening to his podcast, watching all his videos ever since, and he has been such a big inspiration to me. I'm gonna call him out on the podcast right now because
You should. Yeah, you
he's
should
gonna
tag
be
them.
he's gonna be on the podcast one day. I'm calling it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, write this down. No, I'm kidding. But
Yes.
he will be here one day. I had to put that out there because I really mean that too. But he has been an absolute inspiration to me. One of the biggest things, I don't know why, but this always sticks with me. He said this one time, he's like simple scales and fancy fails. And I was literally thrown back in my seat. I was
Yeah.
like, that's like 4 words, but it's got like 6 million words contained into it. He's been such a
Hmm.
big inspiration to me. And I have to ask from that, we could tie it all together here. We always talk about, I've talked to people on this podcast about starting law firms and how, kind of treacherous it is because, you're in the trenches and you're fighting for your company's life. But let's talk about starting your own fitness company.
Hmm.
Can you describe the audience a little bit about that experience and how that was?
Yeah. So I guess a short little background on that experience. So um, I had been a personal trainer for about 3 years at that point. So from like 2014, in 2016, I was working at a fitness company that was contracted out by the government, actually at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Bethesda, Maryland. So I was working there as a trainer, and something that bothered me was that we weren't allowed to make money on like individual personal training sessions. We were on a salary to teach like the group classes and all that stuff. Um, and I just thought it was like disheartening that I couldn't like make additional money by training people, which I was doing as well. But that was just a part of the role that came, with the job. And at the same time, I was still working part time at a different gym as well, and uh, was only getting paid like $20 per session. And I started thinking the profit margin here, if I'm making 20, then the owner of the gym is making more than that because they have to pay bills and salaries and make payroll and pay the utilities in the building. Um, so I'm like, the profit margin here doesn't make sense. You know, if I found my own clients and train my own clients, I can get and keep 100% of the revenue. Like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And at the same time, I had just gotten into Gary V. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Oh, I love Gary Vee.
Okay,
Well,
so
he's from Long Island, so I have to.
yes. So I had just gotten into him. I was like a fanatic. And mind you, this was in 2016. And
Yeah.
Gary Vee had like really just started to take off. And I was really caught by the entrepreneur bug and like
As am I, don't worry.
like you should be your own boss, like you can like do this yourself. Like I was completely caught by it. And in June of that year my grandfather passed away, and he owned his own barbershop for like 50 years. So I had like entrepreneur uh
It was
like
coursing
blood,
through
if you
your
will.
blood. Yeah, it was coursing through.
Yeah. So all of that kind of came together at the same time. And at the end of 2016, I decided to leave all three jobs I had and go out for business on my own. I made $19,000 my first 2 months, like combined. I had never seen that much money before in my life at one time in my bank account. And I thought, so this was in January and February of 2017. So I thought I had figured out business. Like I thought, okay, this is it. I can make $7, $8, $9,000 a month. This is, easy. Basically my business model, I didn't have one. I didn't have a business plan. I had like the Gary V entrepreneur, like I'm like, fired up to do this. And I just quit. And you know what? I'm just going to find my own clients. I had no background in like sales, marketing, all that. And my business model was I was an in-home trainer. So I would travel to people's homes and train them. I I knew how, well, I didn't know how to network. I just figured out that if you know people, you can, try to ask them for like clients. Like that was basically it. So clients that I did have at my previous gyms, a gym that I had worked at, they actually shut down earlier in 2016. So some of those clients, um, I reached out to and I was like, hey, I'm starting my own thing. I'm training people. If you know people, like send them my way. So that was basically how I got started. No business plan. I had like 5,000 saved up, and I was just trying to figure it out. Yeah, I got a crash course in business. Very quickly, I found out that it's not that easy. um, you learn. I realize. I think you learn faster by just throwing yourself to the wolves, because it's a sink or swim. Um, you know, scenario. I I had my own thoughts on whether it's good for your mental health or not. In terms of uh, you you have to figure out how you're going to pay bills and eat. That can take a toll on you if you're not used to that. So I tell people out there, you or the listeners, if you are going out into business on your own, I wouldn't just abruptly quit your job. It's probably best to continue to work and have your own business, and then once you start to make enough money in that business, to where you feel comfortable enough financially to leave a job, that's probably the most logical way of doing it. But I didn't do it that way. I went into business. So yeah, that was how that started.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing story. I love it very much. I'm inspired by it. Maybe not in the Gary V way. I'm inspired. I don't have, well, I only have one job. I work for my dad, so I can't
Okay.
that, unfortunately. I can't quit that. But I think what's important, what I have to ask is, how important and how did it sort of shape you taking that risk, just abruptly quitting that job, how did it shape you as a person going forward, even in law school nowadays, how does it shape you? How does it change your perspective on life?
uh, so in the so first, it gave me a taste of freedom from the corporate world, or from a job in general. It's something that you don't know what it tastes like until you experience it yourself. Most people don't know what that feels like. The feeling of you wake up in the morning and you have no boss, which which is freeing. At the same time, um, it forces you to discipline yourself, which is a very difficult thing. It was certainly difficult for me because you're used to having a boss, you're used to having a schedule, a structure, people telling you what to do. Now you have to do it yourself. Um, but I think it's a valuable skill that carried over into law school as well. Because in law school, yes, you do have class, but outside of class, the real work is the reading cases and the writing assignments. That's the actual work with law school. And with that, you have to create your own schedule and discipline yourself into how to divvy up time, between the readings and the writing assignments, and how much should I read for this class. For this class, is the material more dense in this class? In this class, is the professor expected? Does the professor expect you to know the details of the cases a little bit more than this one was, or do they just want the general facts? Like that experience, having my own business, kind of that skill of having to discipline yourself, that carried over into law school. I'll say the biggest thing that law school has taught me, this doesn't really have to do with the business so much, but to go a little bit deeper into your question, um, time management. Time management is probably the most important skill that will serve you well in law school, particularly for me being a parent. So I'll deviate a little bit. So Claudia, my wife, she got pregnant. So we found out that she was pregnant right during finals of my 1L fall year. So, and then Sophia was born August 12th, 2022. So she was born about 2 weeks before the fall semester of my 2L year. So the adjustment period of being a first-time parent of a newborn during my 2L fall year, time management was even more of a component of that, because quite simply, your time is just cut short. You have to figure out how to do all the work, and it's even more work now in 2L year, by the way, with the legal writing is even more dense, and like journal and all that stuff, which I'm on. So you have to figure out how to do more work in less time, or how to divvy up time and use all the free time that you have available, which unfortunately means sometimes having to work, at midnight or 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. And then also having enough of you left over to keep up with your fitness or health and your mental health and your wife and being a parent. So time management is probably the most important skill.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, even though I don't have a wife and kids. But in doing this podcast and starting it, early last semester, it really starting to pick up right now because I'm putting a lot more work into it, putting a lot more time into it. But I still have to go to class every week, which honestly just sucks. But I do it. I'm a philosophy major, so I enjoy the
Oh,
class.
right, right,
It's
right.
not
Yes.
it's not the worst thing in the world. I haven't talked about philosophy yet this episode. You're doing well, Jeff. You're keeping it
Hey,
within.
you.
Uh, but just the other, I think I said this on the last episode I just recorded, but with all this stuff going on and having a lot of podcasts to record and I started using a reminder app. I've never used the reminder app in my
Mhm.
life. I started using Google Calendar. I've never used the calendar, I don't think, in the 20 years I've been alive on this earth. So
Yeah.
there's just many things that I've had to start doing because, I just don't have that much time in the day. I go to class in the morning. I'm at class till 5 p.m. And then I have all that time, but I still have homework. I still have tests to study for. I still got to get good grades so my mother doesn't kill me. Um, and I'm in Phi Alpha Delta, the pre-law fraternity. I'm their
Oh,
secretary.
cool.
I got to do work for that. So I got a lot going on, which is good. I love being busy. I hate free time, really. Not like
Hmm.
it's like, if I have any free time, I try to read or something, do something of productivity. But sometimes I like watching wrestling. I always watch wrestling.
Okay.
Like I keep my hobbies in check. I take my hobbies very seriously. I watch soccer all the time too. Now I gotta ask, do you watch soccer? Do you have any favorite sports?
Yeah. So yeah. Now, before I get to that, if you have a section of your podcast that is about a philosophy, if you still have like that section available, we can definitely dive into that.
It's
But yeah,
honestly, it's usually off a whim. Like someone says something, and I'm like, oh well, Aristotle said that actually. So if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it. Don't worry.
yeah. So in terms of sports, so my background, which I guess certainly ties into like my own like professional fitness background. So football, I played football from age 6 through my sophomore year of college. I went to Bowling Green
Oh
State
wow.
for my freshman year. I was a preferred walk on. I was a red shirt. So I didn't play. I just had to train a lot. And then that was when I transferred to Old Dominion for my sophomore year. So football was a part of my life for 14 years. And with that came uh, resistance training and strength training. So strength and conditioning was like my my first, I guess, like professional passion, which came from sports. So like powerlifting, I was actually a competitive powerlifter for
Wow.
several years. Actually, still hold the Maryland state record for deadlifting and the Raw 100 federation for the junior weight class. I deadlifted 573.
Oh, thank
Um,
goodness.
yeah. So powerlifting, um, like once I was done playing football, my powerlifting and strongman were like my next like passions in terms of sports. So I've competed in that. I've competed in like men's physique
Hmm.
shows. So I've done that. So basically, like strength sports are things that I've actually competed in. It's a passion of mine still. Um, I I still don't write programs for people. I do it for like myself. Like I'm so into literature with like the West Side Barbell like programming and periodization and all that stuff. And soccer, it's funny. I started watching soccer intensely like 2 years ago. So like the World Cup, it's a big deal, but I started watching the Premier League a lot like last year.
Wait,
I
who do you
just really
support? Who do
got
you
into it.
support?
Yeah.
Who do you support?
I really don't have a favorite team. I just watch a lot of all the games just come on the USA Network
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on Saturdays and Sundays. So I just like tune in. I do have ESPN Plus, so I catch the La Liga games. I really don't care who's playing. I just watch them. I probably, if I had to like choose a team, I like Tottenham. I don't like them as much now because Kane left. He went to
Bayern
um,
Munich.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was a big deal. But the South Korean a player,
Hoyman's son.
yeah, I'm definitely a fan of his. So Tottenham, I watched a lot last year, but and I really don't have a favorite team. I just catch the games that come on.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm a very big Chelsea fan, so
Oh, all right.
it's a very big rivalry, Tottenham and Chelsea, but
Mhm.
it's okay. I love the game of soccer as well. I'm always tuning into the weekend games. My favorite part about soccer is that it's always on. Like, NFL
Yeah.
football, it ends in February and you don't get it back till, September. But the season ends in May, and
Hmm.
then by June the Euros start.
Yeah.
And then by the time you're done with the Euros, preseason is already beginning for all the club teams. So
Yep.
that's why I love soccer. And just like yourself, I only got into it, I think 4 years ago,
Uh-huh.
4 years ago. So it hasn't been that long. My brother's roommate was really into it, and he started
Oh,
getting
all right.
into it. And then he came home, and we started watching it, and then I started watching it. And one of my friends, he plays collegiate soccer at Binghamton, and he's
Oh,
one
cool.
of my best friends, and he's a big Liverpool fan, so we started watching
Okay.
together. So it all kind of came
They're very
together.
good this year too.
Oh, they are
Yeah.
very good, and I don't hate them. I don't love them either, but it's I love watching the sport. I think it's one of the most entertaining sports as well. I've been playing a lot of soccer too, because
Oh, cool.
just like yourself, I played football my whole life. My father played college football at East Stroudsburg University.
Nice.
So it's in my blood, but my dad didn't let us play soccer. He didn't like it. But senior of high school, I finally got to play. I think I played 7 minutes in a game. It was the best
Okay.
7 minutes of my life. But after that, we play in indoor. I play in indoor leagues. I play intramural here at Albany. So
Oh, cool.
I love it. It's honestly my favorite sport, and I played basketball my whole life. So
Awesome.
it totally just flipped everything. I wish I played soccer my whole life, but I just had to. Did you have a favorite football team? I have to ask.
Yeah, so I'm a Packers fan.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a diehard Packers fan
wow.
since 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, and then for football, I'm a Michigan fan. So I know that seems like completely random. I have no personal ties to Wisconsin or Michigan, um, but Charles Woodson was my favorite player. And yeah, like he's my favorite all time player. He played at Michigan, and then obviously he played for the Packers, and he helped them win the Super Bowl. So that's a plus. Yeah, what position did you play in football?
So, admittedly, I stopped playing in like I think it was when I stopped. I think it was ninth grade of high school because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Not that I don't hate football, but like I don't know. It wasn't really my thing. Looking back, I probably should have played, but I don't know. It's just me. But when I played from like when I was like literally like 4 years old because they got
Oh
me
wow.
really secretly. Don't tell anyone. I was in like preschool and I was getting tackled.
Okay.
But I wanted to play really badly, but I played quarterback for like 10 years of my life.
Nice.
And then when I got to middle school, I eventually switched to wide receiver. I love that.
Same. Yeah,
I
that's what I played. So
so I love wide receiver. My brother was an exceptional football player, much better than me. All county wide receiver. He was
oh cool.
amazing, but he played college basketball. He's just a very good athlete, much better
Okay.
athlete than I could ever be. That's why I stick to soccer nowadays, even though he's probably better at soccer than me now. But it's I eat my ego when it
yeah.
comes to that stuff. I'm just like, let's just give him the ball because I want to win the game.
Yeah.
Um, but we're coming down. Last three questions here. My first
Sure.
question, it's a mainstay on the podcast now. I used to say, "Oh, it's so weird," whatever, because people convince me of that. But what are the sorts of things that you consume, not food, consume on a daily basis? Either that be social media, Instagram, Twitter, um, trying to think of other stuff. Instagram, Twitter, I don't, not Snapchat, but I know you talked about Gary Vee before, Alex Hormozy. So like,
Mhm.
do you have any favorite content creators, that sort of stuff? What's crossing the transom of Jeff's mind on a daily basis?
Well, first of all, I'm going to start listening to your podcast.
Oh, thank
So
you very much. I
I'm going to
appreciate that.
put that on. Yeah, so I'm going to put that on the list of things. Um, I basically took all of social media off my phone, like last year. So YouTube, which I guess is a form of
Oh, I
social
forgot about
media.
YouTube. I always forget about YouTube.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like my main like content form. Yeah. Alex Hormozy is probably the content creator I watch the most. Yeah, him. I do watch some like bodybuilding content. So like Kai Green, is a
Hmm.
very famous bodybuilder. Um, so yeah, most of the content I consume is based around like bodybuilding, powerlifting. I'm gonna start to run like 5Ks
Oh, wow.
soon because I don't like the feeling of not being in shape, like cardiovascular speaking. I wanted to keep that like fitness modality. So I just started watching a bit more of like hybrid training stuff. So like guys who high bodybuild or powerlift, but also run because trying to train them concurrently uh, is very difficult. And most people believe that, like if you're a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, like cardio kills gains, and like I can't do that. And that's not true. And conversely, people who run a lot, particularly long distance runners, they don't tend to carry a lot of lean mass. Um, but lifting weights would serve those people very well. So yeah, so I just started to get into like that type of content, trying to train those two things concurrently. But yeah, lifting, running, and Howard Hormozy stuff, which I'm into more of. And I know I said that we may or may not talk about it, but more of the philosophical like mindset stuff. So yeah, those are like the main things.
Yeah, I at first I forgot to say that the gym I go to here in Albany, ABC Fitness, has a enormous powerlifting community. They
Oh really?
actually and strongman community. They actually have like the giant board up on the gym.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
humongous. It's the best gym I've ever gone to in my life,
Okay.
quite honestly. But they have a giant board of like all the people, all the weight classes. The biggest. But there's some people in there who are like it's crazy. I seen this one guy, he was deadlifting 9 plates, and I was like, this is insane. And
Oh wow.
he was like 6'5", legit, like, at least 300 pounds, just ripping it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So there's a ton of those people in there. So, they got Atlas stones in there as well.
Okay. Yeah.
They're actually opening another gym in the same lot, and it's just for powerlifting. It's a
Oh
powerlifting
nice.
dedicated gym. So I always think that's
Wow.
amazing. And one day they'll sponsor my podcast. If I say their name
Hey
enough,
man.
this is like the third. This has got to be like the 20th time I ever,
Yeah.
in them. But I'm more than happy to give the free promo, because it is the best gym. I'm going there after this. But um, what was I gonna say? Uh, I do get a lot of bodybuilding content on
Hmm.
my YouTube and like the Instagram sometimes. I always see, obviously Arnold is, the man when it comes to bodybuilding. I think and Ronnie Coleman as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
what's a Jay? What's that guy's name?
Jay Cutler.
Yeah, Jay Cutler
Mhm.
as well. He's always on there. So I always see those guys like they talk about like their crazy eating routines. I mean
Yeah,
like Jay Cutler was eating like 100 egg whites a day or something, and he like
sounds
always
about
had
right.
the rice cooker going. I'm like, that's crazy. And he had like the whole cows in his garage. He had two full freezers of meat. So I'm like,
Yeah, man. No, actually, I'm thinking about that too. There's actually on Reddit, which is that's the other social media platform I do on Reddit. The Reddit for steak. There's like a whole subreddit for like just steak, and there's some people on there who actually purchase cows and they get them like butchered and they freeze the parts. I think it's like 2,400, like for like a cow, like which I forgot how many pounds of like different cuts of meat, but like I think it's actually a decent investment if you got the money for it. I mean, you know.
Yeah, my bro. So me and my brothers were actually thinking about that. We were actually gonna get
Oh
a
yeah,
cat.
see?
We were seriously considering it, and my oldest brother Nick was actually very much considering it. Like he almost made the purchase. I don't
Oh
know
awesome.
what happened, but I'd buy a cow if you asked me. But second to last question here, Jeff. You're at law school. You're always working. But what does an ideal Friday night or Sunday morning look for Jeff?
A Friday night and Sunday morning. So Friday night, that is usually you talked about your calendar earlier. So on my calendar, that is blocked off for me and my wife. So after we put Sophia down for bed, my Friday night. So we typically have like a it's like a marriage like check in. So we uh check in with each other, and then like usually movie and wine, and food like that's a typical night. A lot different from the time where we were not parents. Those were different times. Sunday morning, you said?
Yes.
Uh, Sunday morning, usually like playing with Sophia, my daughter. That's like basically it.
Hey, listen, like how as he said, simple scales, fancy fails. There's nothing wrong with simplicity. I love it very much. I keep it in my life. As I said, I take my hobbies very seriously. So, I keep it simple. Just I
Yeah.
get what I need and I get out of there. That's what it's all about. But the final question here, Jeff, I do this at the end of every episode. What are your words of wisdom to the aspiring law students, the current law students, and even the legal professionals can get some words of wisdom from Jeff?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm usually the one trying to seek the words of wisdom. um, yeah, I would say for law students, going back to time management. Learn how to properly manage your time. Um, Keep perspective. Um, because it's something that I've certainly had to do as well. If you don't get the job that you want, um, or if your grades are not where you want them to be, um, at the end of the day, you're going to be a lawyer. Um, no matter what your grades are, yes, you need to graduate, obviously, and pass the bar exam. But all of that aside, you're going to be a lawyer, and yeah, like just keep proper perspective. Yeah, that's really all I got.
No,
Because
it's
the
no
yeah, I mean,
it's no worry, Jeff. It's no worry. I thought it was perfect. I thought it was just fine. Any sort of words of wisdom always work on this podcast.
oh
Oh, go
yeah, I will add. Try your best to take care of your health. With my background, I have to keep in mind that your body is your game piece, and you carry it with you in life. So, in order for you to do your best, in law school or at your job at being an actual lawyer, so this goes out to the lawyers as well. You have to take care of yourself first. You can't be the best lawyer, the best parent, or the best partner if you're not the best version of yourself. So,
Well, Jeff, wonderfully said. I will take that. I'm going to take that advice to myself as well and keep going to the gym, obviously. But Jeff, that's
good.
it. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And for everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in. And I will see you in the next one.